If you think your job will make you rich in 2026, you've already lost. Not later, not someday, right now. Because the game you're playing is designed for you to stay exactly where you are, working, earning, surviving, but never escaping. You wake up early, rush through your morning, sit in traffic or log into a screen, give away 8, 9, sometimes 10 hours of your life. And at the end of the month, you get paid. And somehow, it's still not enough. Not enough to feel free, not enough to feel secure, not enough to feel like you're actually moving forward. And the worst part? You start blaming yourself. Maybe I need to work harder. Maybe I need a better job. Maybe I need more discipline. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the problem is the system you're trusting? Because in 2026, having a job doesn't mean you're safe. It means you're limited. Your income is controlled. Your time is controlled. Your growth is controlled by someone else. And no one becomes rich with a limit placed on their life. Hi, my name's Bryony, and I spend way much time thinking about why people who look financially reckless are sometimes better prepared for disaster than people who did everything right. If you've ever felt vaguely unsettled about how dependent your entire financial life is on one company, subscribe and hit look around. People in the US, UK, Canada, they're earning more money than ever before. Higher salaries, more opportunities, more career growth, and yet more stress, more debt, more anxiety, more people living paycheck to paycheck. That's not normal. That's not bad luck. That's design. Because every year your expenses rise faster than your income. Rent goes up, food prices go up, transportation goes up, everything gets more expensive, except your freedom. So even if you're getting paid more, you're actually falling behind, slowly, quietly, without even realizing it. And this is where the trap gets dangerous, because your job gives you just enough comfort to stop you from questioning anything. You're not broke enough to panic, but not free enough to live. So you stay. You keep showing up, keep working, keep waiting. Waiting for the promotion, waiting for the raise, waiting for the moment things finally click. But they don't, because that moment isn't coming. Not in this system, not playing by these rules. Because the rules changed, and most people didn't notice. There was a time when working hard actually led to wealth, when loyalty to a company meant something, when one income could build a life. That time is gone. Now, hard work alone is not enough. In fact, it's irrelevant if it's pointed in the wrong direction. You can work harder than everyone you know and still stay stuck, because effort without leverage is just exhaustion. And the people getting rich in 2026, they understand something most people don't. They don't trade time for money. They build things that make money without their time. While you're working hourly, they're building assets. While you're waiting for a paycheck, they're creating systems. While you're thinking about security, they're thinking about ownership. That's the difference. And it's not small, it's everything. Because when you rely only on a job, your income stops when you stop. If you don't work, you don't earn. If you get sick, you fall behind. If you lose the job, everything collapses. That's not stability. That's dependency. And dependency is the opposite of wealth.
But nobody tells you this, because the system needs workers. It needs people who follow instructions, people who stay predictable, people who don't question why they're stuck. So you're taught to play it safe. Go to school, get the degree, find a stable job, climb the ladder. But what they don't tell you is that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. You climb for years, only to realize you're still not where you wanted to be. Still trading time, still asking for permission, still waiting, and time is the one thing you don't get back. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because deep down, you already know this. You feel it every time your paycheck hits and disappears. Every time you think about quitting, but don't. Every time you realize you're living the same month over and over again. Different dates, same cycle. And the truth is, most people will stay in that cycle forever. Not because they have to, but because it's easier. Easier to stay comfortable, easier to avoid risk, easier to ignore the fact that something needs to change. But comfort is expensive. It costs you your potential. It costs you your freedom. And eventually, it costs you your future. Because while you stay comfortable, someone else is taking the risk, building the business, learning the skills, creating the opportunities, and slowly they pull ahead. Not because they're smarter, not because they're better, but because they decided not to stay stuck. That's it. That's the difference. And here's the part most people won't accept. Saving money won't fix this. Budgeting won't fix this. Cutting expenses won't fix this. Because the problem isn't how you manage money, it's how you make it. If your only source of income is your job, you are always one step away from being stuck again, no matter how disciplined you are, no matter how careful you are. Because you're playing defense, trying not to lose, while the people getting rich are playing offense. They are building, creating, owning. That's the shift. Ownership. Not just working for money, but owning things that generate money. Because when you own something, your income is no longer tied to your time. It grows, it scales, it continues even when you stop. That's how wealth is built now, not through jobs, but through leverage. And leverage doesn't care how many hours you work, it cares about what you build. So the real question isn't, is my job good enough? It's, is this the only thing I have? Because if it is, you already know where that road leads. More years, more effort, same result. And maybe that's fine for some people. Maybe some people are okay with that life. But if you're not, then something has to change. Not everything at once, not some crazy overnight decision, but something. Because staying where you are guarantees nothing changes. And the truth is, you don't need to quit your job to start. You need to stop relying on it. Use it, don't depend on it. Let it fund something bigger, something that's yours, something that grows, something that doesn't stop paying you the moment you stop working. Because that's the only real way out. Not harder work, not more hours, but a different direction. And most people won't take it. They'll hear this, agree with it, and go right back to the same routine tomorrow. That's why most people will never be rich. Not because they can't, but because they won't change the way they think. And if nothing changes, nothing changes. Simple as that. So if you're still believing your job will make you rich in 2026, understand this clearly. It won't. Not on its own. Not anymore. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you give yourself a chance to do something about it. Because the difference between staying stuck and actually building wealth starts with one decision: to stop playing the game the way you were taught and start playing it in a way that actually works. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Everywhere you look, you'll start noticing the same pattern. People working harder than ever, but getting nowhere. More degrees, more certifications, more experience, but still stuck in the same cycle. And the reason is simple. The world doesn't reward effort anymore. It rewards positioning. You can be the hardest worker in the room and still be the lowest paid, not because you lack value, but because you're in the wrong game. And most people never question the game. They just try to play it better, faster, harder, longer, hoping something changes. But nothing changes, because effort inside a broken system just leads to burnout, not wealth. And this is exactly why so many people feel exhausted all the time, not just physically, mentally, emotionally. Because deep down, they know they're running in circles, putting in energy, and getting the same results over and over again. And eventually, that frustration turns into acceptance. This is just how life is. This is normal. This is what everyone goes through. But that's the biggest lie of all. Because it's not normal. It's common. And there's a difference. Common means most people experience it. Normal means it's the way things should be. And struggling your entire life is not how things should be. But when you see everyone around you doing the same thing, it starts to feel normal. So you stop questioning it. You stop pushing against it. You adapt to it. And that's how people get stuck for decades. Not in one big decision, but in thousands of small ones. Choosing comfort over growth. Choosing certainty over opportunity. Choosing later instead of now. And those small choices build a life you never actually wanted. Nothing really changed. You're older, more tired, but still in the same position. Still trading time. Still waiting. And that realization hits hard. Because time is the one thing you can't earn back.
Money comes and goes, opportunities come and go. But time, once it's gone, it's gone. And this is where most people feel stuck because they think it's too late. Too late to change direction, too late to start something new, too late to take risks. So they settle. They lower their expectations, convince themselves that this is enough, even when they know it isn't. And that's how the system wins, not by forcing you to stay, but by making you believe you should. Now think about this. If jobs were really the path to wealth, why are the majority of people with jobs not wealthy? Why do people work for 30, 40 years and still worry about money? Why do they retire not with freedom, but with fear? Because the system was never designed to make everyone rich.
It was designed to keep everything running, and for that, it needs workers. Consistent, reliable, replaceable. That's the role, and the moment you depend entirely on that role, you give up control. Control over your time, your income, your future. And once you give that up, getting it back becomes harder every year because responsibilities grow, bills increase, pressure builds, and risk feels more dangerous, so you stay where it feels safe, even if it's slowly draining you, even if it's keeping you stuck, because uncertainty feels worse than dissatisfaction. But here's the truth most people avoid. Staying where you are is the biggest risk of all, because it guarantees one thing: nothing changes. No growth, no freedom, no real progress, just the same cycle repeating itself. And the longer you stay in that cycle, the harder it becomes to break out of it. Not because you can't, but because you get used to it. You adapt, you normalize it. And once something becomes normal, it stops feeling urgent. And when it's not urgent, you don't act. And when you don't act, you stay stuck. That's how it works. Quietly, slowly, without you even realizing it. Until one day, you look back and wonder what happened. Now, here's something most people don't realize. The opportunity to change your life has never been more accessible than it is right now. But at the same time, distraction has never been stronger. You have access to information, skills, tools, opportunities right in your pocket. But instead of using it to build something, most people use it to escape. Scrolling, watching, consuming, distracting themselves from the reality they don't want to face. And every hour spent consuming is an hour not spent creating. And that's the difference again. Creators build leverage, consumers stay dependent. And in 2026, that gap is only getting wider, because the people who create are capturing attention, and attention is one of the most valuable assets in the world right now. It drives sales, it builds businesses, it creates influence, and the people who understand that are building wealth faster than ever before, while everyone else is still trading time for money, still stuck in the same cycle, still wondering why nothing changes. And this is where everything starts to shift. The moment you stop asking, how can I earn more, and start asking, how can I build something that earns without me? That question alone changes your direction, because it forces you to think differently, to move differently, to see opportunities where others see risk. And that's where growth begins. Not in comfort, not in routine, but in uncertainty, in trying something new, in stepping outside the system you've been following your entire life. And yes, it's uncomfortable. It's supposed to be, because anything that actually changes your life will feel unfamiliar at first. But staying where you are, that's familiar. And look where that's getting most people. Still stuck, still waiting, still hoping something changes, without ever changing anything themselves. And that's why most people will never be rich. Not because they don't have the chance, but because they stay in the same patterns, the same mindset, the same routine, day after day, year after year. And unless something breaks that pattern, nothing will ever be different. So the real question isn't, can you become rich? It's, are you willing to break the cycle? Because that's the only way it happens. Not by doing more of the same, but by doing something different. Something uncomfortable. Something uncertain. Something most people are too afraid to even try. And that's exactly why it works.
And here's the part that changes everything. Because up to this point, you might still be thinking, okay, I get it, but what does this actually mean for me? It means you've been focused on the wrong target your entire life. You were taught to chase income, a better salary, a higher paying job, a bigger paycheck. But income alone is the slowest way to build wealth, And in 2026, it's the easiest way to stay stuck. Because when you chase income, you're always starting from zero. Every month, every paycheck, it resets. You work, you get paid, you spend, and you're back where you started. Again, and again, and again. It's a loop that looks like progress, but never actually moves you forward. And the longer you stay in that loop, the harder it becomes to see a way out. Because your entire life gets built around it. Your bills, your lifestyle, your habits, everything depends on that next paycheck. So even if you want to change, you feel trapped, not physically, mentally. Because walking away from what's familiar feels like losing everything, even if what you have isn't what you really want. And that's the illusion. You think you're secure, but you're actually dependent. You think you're progressing, but you're actually repeating. And the system rewards that repetition. It promotes it, encourages it. Because predictable people are easy to control, easy to replace, easy to keep inside the system. Now compare that to someone who thinks differently, someone who doesn't just chase income, but builds assets. At first, they struggle. They don't see results immediately. There's no guaranteed paycheck, no clear path. And that's why most people quit early, because they expect quick results from something that requires long-term thinking. But the ones who don't quit, the ones who stay consistent, something starts to happen. Slowly at first, then faster. Their effort begins to stack, their results begin to compound, and eventually they reach a point where their income is no longer tied to their time. That's the shift, the moment where everything changes. Because now they're no longer in the same game. They're not trading hours anymore. They're leveraging systems, and systems don't get tired. They don't take days off. They don't stop earning. That's why the gap between people is growing so fast. It's not about working harder. It's about playing a completely different game. And here's the uncomfortable truth. By the time most people realize this, they've already spent years, sometimes decades, in the wrong game. And that's why it feels so hard to change. Because it's not just about learning something new, it's about unlearning everything you believed before, everything you were taught, everything you trusted. That's not easy. In fact, that's the hardest part, but it's also the most important, because once your perspective changes, your actions follow, and once your actions change,
Your results have no choice but to change. That's how this works. Not overnight, not instantly, but inevitably, if you stay consistent. And this is where most people fail. Not at the beginning, but in the middle, when it's boring, when it's slow, when it feels like nothing is happening. That's where they stop. That's where they go back to what's comfortable. Back to the job, back to the routine, back to the cycle. Because at least it feels certain, even if it keeps them stuck. But the people who actually win, they push through that phase. They keep building, keep learning, keep adjusting, even when there's no immediate reward. Because they understand something most people don't. The early phase isn't supposed to pay you. It's supposed to prepare you. Skills, experience, understanding. That's the real return in the beginning. And once you have that, everything accelerates. Opportunities appear, connections form, income grows, not linearly, but exponentially. And that's when it starts to make sense. That's when all the effort finally clicks. But by then, you're no longer the same person. You don't think the same. You don't act the same. You don't settle the same. Because you've seen what's possible. And once you see that, going back becomes impossible. Now, here's the final truth. Most people watching this won't change anything. Not because they can't, but because they won't act. They'll feel motivated for a moment. They'll think about starting. They'll imagine a different life. And then they'll go right back to their routine. Because action is uncomfortable, and comfort is addictive. That's why the system works so well. It doesn't trap you, it conditions you. Conditions you to stay the same, to avoid risk, to delay change, to accept less. And unless you consciously break that pattern, you'll stay in it for years, for decades, maybe for life. Week, now, where you decide. Do you keep doing what you've always done and get the same results? Or do you finally step outside that pattern and take control? Because no one is coming to fix this for you. No boss, no company, no system. It's on you.
And that might sound harsh, but it's also powerful, because it means you're not stuck. You're choosing every day, whether you realize it or not. So choose carefully, because the life you end up with is built on those choices. And if nothing changes, nothing changes. But if you do, everything can. And that's the difference. That's where wealth actually begins. Not with money, but with a decision to stop living the same cycle and start building something that breaks it. Because in 2026, that's the only way out.
And once it's gone, it's very hard to get back. That's why this moment matters. Right now, not later. Because right now, you're aware. And awareness without action is just frustration. So do something with it. Anything. Learn a skill. Start something small. Build something that's yours. Even if it fails. Even if it's messy. Even if no one sees it at first. Because that's how it starts. Not with perfection, but with movement. And the people who move eventually separate themselves from the ones who don't. Every single time. Now imagine this. 1 year from now, you're in the exact same place. Same job, same routine, same stress. Nothing changed. How would that feel? Frustrating? Disappointing? Expected? Now imagine the opposite. 1 year from now, you took action. You built something. You learned something. You created new opportunities. Even if you're not rich yet, you're no longer stuck. You're moving. You're growing. You're in control. That's a completely different life, and it all comes down to what you do after this. Not what you think, not what you plan, what you actually do. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about becoming rich. It's about not staying stuck. And most people will stay stuck. They'll close this video, go back to their routine, and forget this feeling, like it never happened. But a small percentage won't. A small percentage will actually do something. And those people, they're the ones who break out. They're the ones who look back years later and realize this was the moment everything started to change. Not because it was magical, not because it was perfect, but because they decided not to ignore it. So now it's your turn. You can scroll, you can forget, you can go back to normal. Or you can do the one thing most people won't. Act. And if you do, even just a little, you're already ahead of everyone who doesn't. That's how small the gap is, and how big the difference becomes. So if this hit you, don't just watch, don't just agree, do something. Because in 2026, that's the only thing that separates people who stay stuck from people who don't. And once you cross that line, there's no going back. Only